Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. Whether you're listening to us on YouTube, on iTunes, or SoundCloud, pleased to have your company this evening. I've got with me Logan,
Good evening, everybody. Alex.
and I've also got Dan.
Hey guys.
And it's a very special episode. It's our 50th episode. We fired up the podcast just over a year and a half ago, back last time we were in the championship. So a lot's changed since the first episode, and we'll get into some memories in a little bit. But we'll start with the more upsetting part of the episode, and that's the defeat to Bristol City on the weekend. And it's a familiar story, Dan. It's been a number of games now where we've conceded late goals, and in this case, it was 3 late goals after a pretty dominating 2-0 lead and a pretty comprehensive performance to that point. So, what did you make of the turnaround, the reversal of fortunes in the game?
Oh, it's very sadly becoming a familiar story. Um, I think I was reading somewhere it's like we've 8 games or something this season that we've dropped goals after the 80th or 85th minute or something, and it's cost us like points in all but I think 2 of the games or something. Like it's just it's very frustrating to watch, and there's various aspects that I'm not understanding, like because we've got guys that are going away. You got like Seb Larson and Jackson Irvine and David Myler who like all went away and and Grosicki all going away, performing very well every time they have international breaks. And then we go, I see that and I go, cool, we're all going to come back. Everyone's in a good mood. We've been doing well. They're going to come back and we're going to put some results on the board. And then they go away and they play really well for their country. And then they come back into the setup and it doesn't seem to just ever be falling together for 90 minutes at club level.
Yeah, there just seems to be something that we can't really put our finger on because, as you're saying, I mean, all of the individual players seem to be good players. They go away, they play well, but then as a team, Logan, they just aren't performing.
Without a doubt, the goals that we've been shipping, to be very brutally honest, in the last few weeks have been some of the worst defending I think I've seen in my time, certainly watching City, and just the inability to clear the ball. I think that we're probably starting to realise what we're missing when we had Maguire and we had Davies. I think we always kind of felt that central defence position, even when Alex Bruce would go in and do a job, and Michael Dawson, a younger Michael Dawson, they were very reliable. And I think that now we're really starting to see the fruits of having a kind of low-knee defensive backline, if you will, and a very young one at that. It just seems to be shipping goals. And as we mentioned on previous podcasts, is the attack doesn't seem to be the problem. I mean, we've got Jared Bowen, who seems to be the only real shining light in pretty much everything we talk about when City related these days, is scoring for fun up the other end. And Fraser Campbell's chipped in. We're really starting to see some really promising goal scoring efforts, particularly by individuals. All this on the back of losing Abel Hernandez. And we're still obviously dropping those points that Dan mentioned. And I think the stat that I saw actually pitched us at 6th in the championship if we hadn't have lost those points from winning position. So when you put the facts down and you look at it like that, it's very concerning times to see where we find ourselves and the climate of the club.
Yeah, and Dan, Logan's just mentioned there, the bright spot, I guess, in the match again was Jared Bowen getting his 10th goal for the season, and it's pretty remarkable to have a winger scoring 10 goals at this stage of the season.
Yeah, he has been. I mean, I think early in before this season, in one of the early couple of rounds, maybe, or in the preview for the season, I'm pretty sure I picked him as a player to watch for us this year. And hasn't he delivered? I mean, he's been outstanding. He's been outstanding, and he, as Logan said, he has been one of the few shining lights for us. Probably a resurgent McGregor is probably the only other player you could pick out as a performing well regularly. But yeah, Bowen has been just a revelation. Although I suppose we could all see that he had the potential. He just needed to get that run of games, and I always felt that if he could get a goal, then more would come, and they have.
Well, yeah, I remember there was the game against Spurs on the final day of last season where Silva threw him in, gave him a start, I think, and he had that really good chance against Spurs to get a goal and just missed it. And you thought at the time perhaps that might have dented his confidence, but it certainly hasn't with the way he's been playing so far this season. I guess the only worry being coming up to the January window, whether or not we'll keep hold of him beyond that window. Logan, do you see any risk that he might be off in January? And if so, do you think it'll be a championship rival or an even higher club that comes calling for him?
With the fragilities that we're experiencing at City at the moment, of course, it's a real possibility that somebody could come in and sweep for him. I would probably suggest if it were to be a third party that came in looking for him, I'd suggest it would probably be someone at the kind of higher end of the championship. Particularly maybe Aston Villa. I know that it's been mentioned that Bruce would probably or certainly be eyeing him. I think from memory, his dad might even be a Villa fan. And when you look at things like that, I think that would be the kind of club that would be the real risk. Whether a Premier League team would come in and take a punt on him yet is probably a little bit early. In saying that, I could certainly see him making an impact on one of those relegation fight teams if they were to take a punt on him, particularly with the form he's in. But I think to answer the question, with the way that the Allams are running the ship, I think that he's seen as an asset. And like everything else, if the way that, unfortunately, most fans, and I guess we're almost resigned to the fact that we are being asset stripped, he would be one of the greatest assets that we have to offer. So it's certainly within the realms of possibility that he will be off in January.
Someone that we suspected would be off this week, but hasn't been the case, was Leonid Slutsky, who, after the Millwall game, there was rumours that Ehab had been in attendance, that he was basically going to be giving Slutsky his last rites after that game, and he sort of held on for the Bristol City game, and there was a lot of anticipation that this was sort of the game to save his job. We went up 2-0, Bowen goes over and celebrates with Slutsky, and you think, well, all the players are behind him, and then they capitulate, and we lose 3-2. So Dan, are you surprised that he's still in the job at the moment? And it sounds as if he's expecting to still be in charge for the Wednesday game.
Honestly, yeah, not that I don't necessarily want to see him go. But I think, like, if you look at it purely based on results and I mean where we expected us to sit, and obviously the Allams had their own expectations of where they thought the squad would find themselves come the end of the season, or come this point in the season, where obviously Slutsky and the players are well below everyone's expectations in that regard. And I think he must be under, and it shows in his last couple of pressers after the post matches, that he's under enormous stress at the moment. And he's not his usual happy-go-lucky sort of character. But yeah, I'm a little bit. I mean, you sort of. I mean, what's it? 6 games without a win now, I think, and you start. It's at this point in the season, and with how we've gone so far, that run obviously it really can't sort of go on much longer, and he could, without him expecting to, probably depart.
Logan, what are your thoughts? Are you sort of, I mean, I guess it's very easy to be pro Slutsky because he's a very likable guy and he came in with such a, breath of fresh air and a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but the results speak for themselves in a lot of ways. I would probably say that I'm like Dan, not wanting him to go, even just from the point of view that I don't know who we could get who'd actually do better. But what's your take on it? Do you think he should be sacked after this sort of run of results? And are you a bit surprised that he's still in the job?
I tend to agree with you exactly, in the sense that I don't think we want him to go. I think he is, even in his short time at the KCOM, he's certainly endeared himself to the fans as somewhat of a fan favourite. And he is a very likeable guy. And as we said before, he's scoring goals. He has brought a very promising attack mentality to City that is kind of resulting in good team goals and a lot of individual scorers. I think that the problem for me lies with a lot of the comments that he has been saying in his presser that Dan said. I mean, all you have to do is watch social media to see the comments of Grzycki and Facey Campbell and players like that are coming out and saying that they don't know what to say to fans. They can't explain it. We have to do better. There just seems to be a whole lot of direction lost, or there's rather than no direction. And these guys, the playing group themselves, can't kind of seem to find the answers as to why they're shipping these goals and why they're losing from all these winning positions. And I don't think that for all of the positive things Slutsky provides, I don't think he instills them with that confidence and that kind of mental strength that is required to compete in this division. So I think that the writing is on the wall, and I think it's inevitable that whilst he might be in charge of the Wednesday game, pending a very promising result, I think he will be off. I won't be too sad to see him go if that be the case, but as you mentioned, it can be very careful what we wish for, in the sense that who will come and take a club that is on the brink of a double relegation and seems to be struggling with every performance.
Absolutely, and it was a pretty unhappy result against Bristol City overall, and hopefully we can get better against Wednesday, and we'll talk about that game in a moment. But we'll talk about happier memories just for now. And I said at the start of the episode that we began the podcast back in February of 2016, which was a season where we were chasing promotion to the Premier League under Steve Bruce. It was happier times for the club in a lot of ways. And I guess I wanted to raise with you guys sort of your happiest memories from then until now, because we have had a lot of highs, even discounting events that happened before then, the FA Cup final, Europe, etc. You still got the playoff final, we've got the League Cup semi-final, making history as the first club to defeat a reigning champion on the opening day of the season. There's a lot of really positive memories that we've got in that last year and a half. So I'll start with you, Logan. What's your favourite memory, I guess, from that 18 months?
Strangely, the one that sticks out to me the most would by far and away be the 3-0 victory in the first leg of the playoffs against Derby.
Okay.
I know that there has been more monumentous occasions, but I think that at the time, the way we kind of linked into the playoffs and the way that Derby were playing, I couldn't find it feasible that we could have even stood a chance. And to go there and score 3 goals in the fashion that we did, particularly when Andy Robertson scored very late in the piece. I just remember the momentum and the feeling around the club at the time that really kind of showed me that I thought we were going to get promoted again. And that moment, is obviously a very fond one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great game because obviously Hernandez scoring the opening goal with a brilliant long-range strike, and then Odebajo essentially scoring the goal, but I think it took a couple of deflections on the way in. It just seemed that sort of game where it was destiny for us to win the game, in the sense that everything just seemed to go right for us.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that also the fact that kind of gave us that spark at the right time of the season, given the fact that we were on the other side of a form slump, it really kind of restored the playing group. And we all know what happened after that.
Absolutely. Dan, what was your favourite memory?
I liked the win over Leicester to start last season. That was pretty special, considering we went in with probably as equally disrupted, if not more disrupted, pre-season into that Premier League season last year, and to come out against the reigning champions with who were getting their individual players were all getting their various accolades, and Jamie Vardy had scored in 12 straight games in the season before, and all the everything that was going on, and no one gave us any hope of I don't think anyone at that point, and with what had happened, had tipped us to win basically no one would have picked us to win a game at all year, I don't think. And we came out and we played them off the park on the day. It was good.
And the double bicycle kick was a pretty fantastic way to open up scoring as well. I don't think I've seen a more unusual goal than that.
No, yeah, that was interesting. That was Dio and Hernandez both went up for that, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, it was crazy because, as you say, Bruce basically walked out middle of July, so we didn't have a manager. 12 fit players, I think, to start the season. We had one player on the bench, which I think was Maloney, but we didn't make any subs in that game. I think we went the first couple of games without making a sub and without changing the lineup. And I think it equaled some Premier League record, I think, in the process. And and obviously having Phelan, we tried to sound out a couple of managers. So yeah, it was a remarkable victory in the circumstances, and certainly one that we won't forget in a hurry, especially with the way that the team's fortunes are going at the moment. And I'll split the middle and go with the playoff final because, like Logan with the Derby win, it seemed the sort of game. I remember talking on the podcast going into it that we were the favourites going in, which is always to spell trouble as a City fan because whenever we're expected to do anything, we inevitably cock it up. And it was a strange feeling watching that game because we were dominating them in a number of senses, and we had the superior squad, the superior players, and it was almost expected that we were going to win, which is a very unusual feeling. And then Diame pops up with an absolute screamer of a winner, a goal worthy of settling many games. And we just seem to have that knack at Wembley of scoring a pretty incredible goal.
Snodgrass. Now Diame. Oh, Diame! A diamond of a goal from Mohamed Diame. 20 minutes to play in the playoff final, and Hull City hit the front.
And so now we'll talk about that Sheffield Wednesday game. We've just heard the Mo Diame screamer goal at Wembley that we've just been talking about, and we'll look ahead now to the weekend where we play Sheffield Wednesday. So it's a pretty big game for both teams because we're both struggling down the wrong end of the table at the moment. And I'll start with you, Logan. I guess we've already talked about the Wembley game. Are there any other Sheffield Wednesday games that stick in your memory? I know we had that pretty incredible win under Phil Brown, I think it was, where Nick Barmby scored a couple of goals. I think it was a 4-1 win at Sheffield Wednesday, or might have been 4-2 win at Sheffield Wednesday. But were there any other games that stick in the memory?
Not particularly. I think that, as you mentioned, obviously with the Diame screamer, I don't think that any other fond memory may have been erased by the magnitude of that one when we think Wednesday. But yeah, it's certainly a club that I think we've enjoyed a lot of joy against. The one other fond memory that I do have against Wednesday was actually a game that I attended when the Yak, who was somewhat dividing the fans at the time, took the dive and at the ground, and I think at the time we were second, and Sheff Wednesday was second last, and they turned up to the KCOM and really kind of rattled us. I think we scored a goal to equalise it maybe in the 80th minute and had absolute momentum, and then they scored 2 late goals and ended up winning 3-1 against the run of play, and kind of shocked all of us in the process. So that game stands out fondly, and I just remember the crowd down at the East Stand really getting stuck into the Wednesday fans, and a lot of people trying to get across and fight. And it was a very colourful event, but a great game to be at, despite the unfortunate result.
I think that was Oxley's one and only appearance for Hull City was in in that game coming off the bench, and yeah, I think it was that late counter-attack that they had, which really kind of unstuck us in that one. Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that one. Dan, did you have any other memories of Sheffield Wednesday heading into this game?
Even if I did, your wonderful recap of the playoff final sort of pushed them all to the side. So, but that playoff game was one to watch, and I remember sitting up and watching it, and I remember was Westwood in goals for them?
Yeah.
And made like a ridiculous amount of saves. I thought we probably should have won that about 6-1 or something, and he just kept pulling them off. It was intense for long periods of that game.
Well, hopefully this one's a little less intense and a little easier in the margins in our victory, but it certainly promises to be a pretty tough fixture, with both sides struggling for a bit of form at the moment, and the Sheffield Wednesday manager, Carvajal, under a bit of pressure as well. So a lot riding up for both managers. I'll start with you, Dan. What's your take on the game? Who do you see Slutsky making any changes to the lineup, and how do you see us going?
I think Slutsky is. I don't think he'll make too many changes. Just probably the one or two that he seems to be making all the time. You know, we haven't quite got, somehow still don't have a like clear best 11, which is very frustrating, because I honestly believe if Slutsky had picked it could just pick a best 11, and that was the team that he was just going to put out each week, then probably would be in a probably not hugely different, but I think there'd be a couple of games that we probably would have picked up points in. So I think he'll make a couple of changes because that's what he seems to want to do. But look, I think honestly, I think our defense will come unstuck at some point throughout the match. I just hope that our offense fires enough to counteract it.
And Logan, what do you think? I mean, Dawson obviously missed with illness last week, and Mazook came in. Didn't look too bad, I didn't think, but with the late capitulation, you can't really put too much credit on the defensive performances. Do you see Dawson coming back into the lineup, and how do you see us performing in this one? Surely we can't lose another late winner or equaliser.
I think that will be a wise decision for Slutsky to recall Dawson, given the fact that he is experienced, and as you mentioned, the capitulation against Bristol. I certainly can see that change being made. I also must say that I've been extremely unimpressed with Dawson this year. I think that he is just that little bit past it now. I still think that he's a very important and vital squad player, particularly if we are to fix the current culture, zapping feel that seems to be generating around the place, mostly due to the Allen family and the off-field drama. But I think that he could be somewhat of a stabilising influence, particularly given what happened last week. I have grave fears for this game, but I think that, as Dan said, I think we will certainly concede at some point. But I do also back the ability in our attack to find a way to score a couple. I'm tipping probably a 1-1 draw.
I saw an interesting comment in the group this week. I don't know how serious it was, that perhaps if Slutsky is sacked, that we could get Dawson in as a player manager. What would you make of that, Logan?
I don't think that he's ready. I think that as far as Michael Dawson's concerned, I think that he would certainly consider himself as having at least another season left in him, or finish this season and potentially one more. To throw him in the deep end, so to speak, give him that player manager role, I just don't think at the moment it would be the right decision for either him or certainly not the club, given he's untried. And I really think that for all the problems that we're experiencing at the moment, we do need someone of experience and a bit of guile who know what it takes to kind of navigate through this division and to be able to restore the confidence in players. And I just don't think that Michael Dawson, given the fact that he has no managerial experience, is ready for that just yet.
I think it'll be interesting as well for this game. Obviously, Slutsky playing 2 up top away to Millwall last time out, which was pretty interesting considering he then reverted to the 1 up top against Bristol City at home, when it's almost counterintuitive when you think you'd go more attacking at home and a bit more defensive away. So it'll be interesting to see if he does go for that again and brings in Campbell and Dicko at the start of the game to really sort of put the pressure on Wednesday. I think that's where the element that I'm most interested in seeing, and then obviously seeing if Dawson comes back in defence, because I quite like Mazook, and I think he's probably been a bit unfortunate not to get more chances so far this season. I think he's probably looked better than Hector, which is really strange to say because Hector started the season looking great and he's just completely fallen off a cliff form-wise. I don't know what's happened to him. I remember after the first handful of games thinking, we should go out and sign him on a permanent, because he looked great, just sort of spraying the ball around and really setting up a lot of attacking plays. But I think those are the 2 elements that'll be the most interesting to look forward to. And then obviously as well, whether Grzycki starts, because it just seems as if every so often there's a bit of a dip in Grzycki's form or confidence, and he finds himself on the bench. So we definitely would prefer to see him in the lineup, and him in fit and firing always is a much better option to have on the field than on the bench, especially when we just don't seem to have many other natural wide players. I mean, we've got Bowen, who I think might have started on the left against Bristol City, and a Henriksen, or even Irvine, I think, might have started on the other wing, but it's not very natural having those central midfield players out wide. And I think if we are to strengthen it all in January, which I don't know how likely that is, I think we just need more wide players, which Silver identified last January, and we really still haven't rectified. We just went out and bought more central midfielders. So it'll all be quite interesting to see how that pans out. Dan, what's your prediction for the scoreline in this one?
Oh God. I want to be confident, but I can't. I think we're going to lose 2-1.
And Logan, you're going with 1-1?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with 1-1. I think there may be more goals in it, if anything, but sadly, I think if there are, it'll probably be from the Owls and sadly not from Mighty Hull.
Yeah, I tend to lean towards Dan's score prediction. I feel really frustrated because last week on the podcast with Brad, I was sitting there saying we're going to win 2 or 3-0, and we almost proved me correct with the 2-0 lead and coughed that up. So I can't be too confident 2x in a row. So unfortunately, I'll predict a loss, but hopefully it's not the case, and we can get a pretty decent win to talk about next week. So thank you, boys, for coming on.
Not a problem.
No worries. It's my
thank-
pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for listening in for our 50th episode. It's pretty incredible to get to this point. 50 episodes going strong and only going from strength to strength. So, yeah, I encourage everyone to share the podcast around, like it, comment, get the word out there and get everyone listening, because it's great to always see more people listening and engaging and really enjoying listening to what we've got to say. So, until next time, come on, City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
This is on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're